Hi, and welcome to the Clive Barker podcast. This is episode 24. We're talking about Rare Comics. Today we are Jose.
Hey, how are you guys doing?
And I'm Ryan. We'll start out with Clive Barker news. On DeviantArt, Clive Barker has started a story. He started off with a chapter. And these are short, 400-word chapters, and then you can submit and see if you can get your edition, your chapter into the story. And it's called Odyssey 2.
It's a project done by a guy called
Technotic, like G, silent G, like Gnostic.
Right.
Technotic,
right.
Yeah.
And he did like this project. He did Odyssey 1. A while ago, and now he's got Clive to join him for Odyssey 2, which is a collaborative project where someone writes the first chapter and then they ask other DeviantArt members to come up with other chapters
and art too. Yeah.
It's going to be interesting. I mean, I remember the last time I've seen Clive Barker get involved with something that was a collaborative project was in the old Kaleidospace website. And this was a project that was called A Story with No Title, A Street with No Name, where there was a character who was, Clive Barker just threw us into this paragraph of a character who's barefoot. He's in the middle of a city. There's mention of a great treatise that was stolen by a demon, and there was talk about a haggard Mrs. Fischel without a finger in her hand. And I remember that actually did get some replies. This was back in like 95, I think. I had just started getting on the internet on my university. And that was my first contact with the internet. Like I couldn't say Googling because Google didn't exist at the time. But I was going on Alta Vista and I was looking for Clive Barker, and I found out about the Hellbound Web and all those places. Yeah. And I discovered this, which was this project. I actually did write one part of it to send, but then it didn't get received or something. I don't know. But it was the first time I ever saw Clive get on a collaborative project. That didn't really go anywhere. That just had like a half a dozen entries or something. And it didn't really go anywhere. Unfortunately, the Kaleidospace website went, out of business after a while, and it's not even online anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah, I still have a mirror of that. So I'm going to send that to Revelations because they wanted some more information on that, and I happen to have that on a floppy disk, no less. Yes, I still have floppy disks from '95.
Do you have a computer that can read them?
I had to find a computer that could read them, and I had to transfer that to USB. And now I finally have that on my laptop again because, they were old files.
Yeah.
So, but this Odyssey is looking really exciting. I think it. Have you read it, the first chapter?
Yeah. So there was a man who was traveling to London, and it was his second time coming into London. And this guy went into a fit, like convulsing, and threw up on him on the train. And that's kind of where it's left. There's something about this, the hint for the next part is like him looking at the throw up stain on his coat.
Right. Yeah. So, is it his coat or his pants?
Maybe
forgot.
His pants. That could be. I can't remember.
Yeah. But, all right. So, and then the guy just leaves the train and he's like, "Hey, are you okay?" He's like, yes, I'm fine. I just need to get home or something. Yeah. And he's kind of embarrassed or something. He just goes away. And then he notices that he has a little puke stain on his own clothing. And it's like, well, pick it up from here. Yeah. And I was like, well, okay, well, let's see what people come up with for this. Yeah. And I have some friends who are going to be in this. I haven't really gotten into writing anything. Mm-hmm. But I just read yesterday an entry from a friend of mine who's on DeviantArt. His DeviantArt name is Eggshen. And I was reading his entry. It looks really interesting. So I think there's a limit on the number of words that you can
400.
write.
Yeah,
per entry. So it's kind of a way to limit people into not, writing a full story after the first.
This one's not going to branch out into alternate stories, right? They're going to pick one.
They're going to pick one for every state, I think.
Yeah.
And then they're going to pick one text paragraph. Well, not a paragraph, but one text entry, one art entry, and I think that's it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so it's really interesting. The first paragraph, or the first chapter, was kind of a tease, and I don't know if Clive had something in mind about what was going to happen. Maybe not.
I don't know.
See how it evolves.
Yeah. So the submissions for the Chapter 1 literature are now closed, but the prologue art are still open through the 22nd of October. So it's going to have it's supposed to have 8 chapters, the prologue plus 8 chapters.
Yeah.
And there's, of course, entry deadlines for each one. And it's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing what comes up.
I think the Chapter 2 entry deadline was Friday the 19th of October, so that's passed as we're recording this.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then there's, I think, 2 weeks for the next one.
Oh, right, yeah. I mean, there are deadline entries all over the place. I mean, I think even if you didn't get to write anything for this project, you can probably try to go for Chapter 2. If you're still an artist on DeviantArt and you're thinking about making some kind of cover art or some kind of illustration for the text, you still have plenty of time until the 22nd to introduce something for the prologue. So just go on DeviantArt. It's there's information available on clivebarker.deviantart.com or technotic.deviantart.com, and that is TECHGNOTIC technotic.deviantart.com.
Yep. So our next thing came from Revelation's Twitter and I think it's on their website too. But Clive Barker is going to be hosting Miss Kitty's Halloween Ball in 2012 in California. So that's great. That means he's starting to feel probably a little better, or at least maybe he's hopeful that he'll be feeling good enough to do that at on Halloween.
Yeah, I found that out not by Revelations, actually by Johnny Raymond or Johnny 2.0,
right?
Who's Clive Barker's boyfriend.
Right.
And I went on the page for the Boulay brothers, who are the guys organizing this, the Masquerade Ball 2012.
Yeah.
And they call it at the annual Hollywood's legendary Electrosex Massive.
Oh, wow.
Miss Kitty's world-famous Halloween Masquerade Ball 2012, which is supposed to be hosted by Clive Barker. I'm hoping that, this time he can actually make it and to LA's most infamous Halloween nightclub event. It's going to have two dance floors, a haunted maze, live stage productions, blood wrestling, topless monster girls and wild bottomless wolf boys for all you Twilight fans out there, and haunted lap dances. So, yeah, and a costume contest with a grand prize of $500 in cash and prizes.
Yeah, jeez.
Sounds crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just reading all of that. Wow. All right.
I'm sure Clive will be the host, and he's probably going to open up the festivities, and he's actually going to be one of the juries for the costume contest, I hear.
Ah, that's cool.
Yeah.
So, so that's it for Clive Barker news. I think the next thing, the forum where we talk about the website is www.timewins.com/forum. Has been completely redone, so now's the chance to get in there. It's a lot easier to sign up now than it was in the past, and if you want to get in there and talk about Clive Barker like we do, you'll be new like all of us now.
Yeah, it looks really nice. Like you said, it's undergoing a complete rebuild, and Roger is doing his best to make it a place where Clive Barker fans can discuss stuff.
Yeah.
So check it out.
Yeah. So then on to our main topic, rare comic books. So I guess what I meant in here by rare is maybe not super hard to find, but these are the ones that maybe people don't know about, or were one-offs, or two or whatever, and they're not something that Clive Barker is famous for, but he helped write them. So starting off, we've got a comic called Primal. Primal is kind of about fear. I mean, the whole thing is centered around fear, and there's a creature called the Riven that feeds on people's fears and makes them real. Yeah.
I always figured that the Riven was like a plural thing. I don't know if you got the same impression.
Yeah, I think so.
It's like they're this race of interdimensional beings or something.
Yeah.
Always throws me back to that Vincent Price movie, The Tingler. Have you ever seen The Tingler?
No.
It's about this supposed, creature that resides in our spinal column and that is responsible for our feeling of tingling when we feel fear because it feeds on fear.
Oh, wow.
And then the only way you can kill a tingler is if you scream really loudly. So, that's...
Is that one of those castle movies where they rigged the theater to do, the seats would vibrate and stuff?
This movie had that kind of... was one of the movies that opened up that whole thing where they would break the fourth wall all the time, and they would talk to the audience. Oh, I think that a tingler is loose in the audience. Scream for your life. And people would start screaming, and there would be, people pulling, these snaky-looking spinal columns through the seats, and they would make people scream. So that's just the thing I get about the Riven. It's like they're this interdimensional thing that possesses people and that feeds on their fear. Yeah. And it's but there's two different beginnings for this story, right?
Well, yeah. So there's Primal, Cradle to the Grave is the first one, and that's kind of a graphic novel-sized one, and it opens up with a professor who he's been sort of disgraced from the university. He's really smart and they like him, but he's got all these weird phobias of people touching him. So if someone wants to shake his hand, then he gets grossed out, and he describes, "Wow, your hand is really meaty and disgusting," and people are like, "Well, I don't like you much either, mister." And so this guy is really into exploring fear and specifically in fear having to do with anthropology. So he's got there's these skulls at the university, and he wants to use them for a study about transcending memories from cavemen or from and they said, no, we've got other projects to do with those skulls that will actually get us grant funding. Your project, you're just screwing around with these skulls, is not going to help us. And so he got really angry, and he stole the skulls and ended up moving to an Air Force base where he was getting military funding telling him about how we can use fear as a weapon.
Right. So this doctor, he, I think he had this theory that, that the cavemen must have had, sharper senses to compensate for their small intellects or something.
Yeah, exactly.
And he believed that he could access some of those senses, kind of meditating or something over the dug up skeletons, right?
Yeah. So he would. It was weird. He would be touching these skulls, and then he'd accidentally break the jaw off or something, and then this memory would flood over him of these cavemen, living their lives, having sex, or there was one who painted a picture of the Riven on the cave wall, and the other cavemen murdered him for it.
Oh, and I think that the university, when they didn't care for his ideas, they sent him out. So he stole some of those skulls and he hid away in a hut.
Yeah, he rented a little house, and he hid away there until, and he was having these experiences with the skulls, and then he wrote to the military, and they funded him to experiment in fear.
And that's when the first comic book comes out after that one shot.
Yeah, so that one shot, he's experimented on several people, and he said that none of them were strong enough, and you get little glimpses of what happened to them, that they're all drained, desiccated corpse looking, and then this last guy, TJ, I think is his name. Something like that. And anyway, he's having an affair with with one of the scientists there, and these scientists all believe that this experimentation has to do with cutting back on fear in soldiers, so that they'll be more efficient, better soldiers, or somehow like taking away their fear. But obviously, he doesn't care about any of that. He's just using them to do his own experiments. So at the end of Cradle to the Grave, we get this one, this one experiment on this TJ, and he was a fireman, and he failed to save this guy because he was too heavy, and he quit being a fireman and became sort of a street person, and he's he sets this fire all around the guy, and the fear that he has of fire now triggers, the event brings the Riven out into the world, and that's where that one ends. And then we've got two short issues, Primal 1 and Primal 2, and they say 1 of 1 and 2 of 2, which is really strange to me because for it being a two-part series, it really feels like it doesn't have an ending. Like it feels like it just stops, and there was meant to be more.
Yeah, the main character is called T.J. Cyrus.
So yeah, there we go.
Yeah, and he gets in touch with one of the Riven called Mida, and this is supposed to be a 4-issue series from what I've learned. This is supposed to be a 4-issue series, but unfortunately, I think it only made it halfway.
Yeah,
like you said, there's Primal, Cradle to the Grave, and there's Primal 1 and Primal 2.
Yeah.
And they were co-written by Clive Barker and Daniel Chichester.
Yeah.
And Eric Saltzgaber.
Yeah. And then the art is different.
John Van
Fleet did the art for Cradle to the Grave, but Lionel Tellaro did the art for the two comics.
Really? I think it was also John Van Fleet. Are you sure?
Well, I'm just reading the front.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think... All right.
I can open these up.
Well, the covers are really nice.
Yeah.
The covers are really nice. The Riven are depicted as this kind of like ectoplasmic skull-like entity.
And they have a big xenomorph-looking thing coming out of the back of their heads, and then their heads get really big and will have a membrane that can absorb a person, and they merge with a person. So that female scientist, he merged with her, the Riven, and merged with her, and that way it could take like physical human form. And walk out of the military installation. Yeah, exactly.
And then it walks right into Salem, Massachusetts.
It's Lionel Tellaro did the art for the two individual comics.
Okay, and then there's like Primal number 2. There's the Riven walks into a Plymouth, a recreation of Salem, which is one of those places where people are dressed in the clothing of the time, and there's like there's like people walking around in the old Puritan headgear and clothing.
Yeah.
And the Riven has taken over a woman's body, but then it's like I said, this doesn't really go anywhere because I think this was supposed to be a 4-issue series, and it only had 2 issues.
Yeah, it says at the end of Primal Cradle to the Grave that there's going to be 4 issues.
Yeah. So I would assume that the Riven would just go on to possess more people in this Plymouth recreation of Salem, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And because that was the last time that the Riven was in our world, I think. It was in Salem, in the old witch trial thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's why the Riven are drawn to that place. And then it's like I said, there's really... I wish I could know what Clive had in store for this, or Daniel Chichester, because it just never went anywhere. It was by Dark Horse in '92, and I guess that, you know, the '90s were a nice time for comic books. It was a big boom, but then they started dying off really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess this was one of the victims of that, you know, big boom that died off. It's like they only did 2 issues.
Yeah, and while the Riven was there, you know, it got a job as one of the actors. And you know, it's like, oh, a spot just opened up because it killed one of the people.
Yeah, it killed one of the ladies or something.
Yeah, it said she was digging in the ground and made all these worms come up and eat her, basically.
Yeah, it's really, really weird.
Yeah.
And then there was also another character. It was Air Force Captain Shankar.
Yeah, and there was a hint that some character was going to know how to defeat the Riven, but it never got that far. Or we never really got a sense of how or who that was.
Yeah, it's like this story was cut in half, so unfortunately it's one of those things that never really went anywhere. Yeah. It had a lot of potential.
Yeah. I thought it was cool. I mean, it was a little confusing. I couldn't even remember which of these come first until I read them again today.
Right. But yeah, I have the 2 issues of Primal, and you have all 3 with the Cradle to the Grave. I need to get that one too.
And I took a chance because I had no idea if that graphic novel was just going to be a compilation of those 2 comics, but I bought it anyway. So it was lucky that it was something else.
Yeah. So that is Primal. Wasn't there also some kind of like movie project for this?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about that before, didn't we? That this was one of the things that could have become a movie, but you never know what it would have been like, right? I mean, Clive Barker's comic book adaptations. We got Saint Sinner was nothing like the comic book.
Yeah.
It was just they just took the name. And so that could have been, or it could have been awesome. I mean, I think if they'd followed this comic book, it could have been really good.
I think that Primal is still available on Amazon. I was just looking at that. So, it's still available if you guys want to, you know, just for the hell of it, just find out what happened in these 2 issues. But, you know, be warned that the story doesn't end.
Yeah.
It just stops halfway and doesn't really go anywhere.
Yeah.
So that's unfortunate.
Yeah. So and a lot of you out there are thinking, well, I know, you know, there's all kinds of rare comic books that I would talk about. So and we've talked about this quite a bit. You know, what should be included and what shouldn't. There's a whole bunch of different kinds of Hellraiser comics that we're going to talk about, you know, when we talk about Hellraiser comics.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah, there's all kinds of... There's Nightbreed comics, and then there's the epic one-shot Nightbreed story.
There was at least 2 issues of Epic, which are really called Epic. It's Epic.
Epic 1 and 2.
Number 2. And they each have one small story of Nightbreed, for example, apart from the 20-something issues.
I thought that number 1 had a Hellraiser story and number 2 has a Nightbreed story.
But, you know, I haven't really looked at them for a long time. You might be right.
This was just me reading the descriptions when I was looking into buying them, because I don't own those, so... I
think only number 2 has a Nightbreed story. The number 2 actually has a cover that has Peliquin, Boone, and Kinski on a, you know, old Chevy or something.
Yeah.
And it's a painted story, so it looks really nice. I think I actually own a page from that story.
Oh, that's cool.
there's like a scene where Pelican is involved in a car crash, and that's really, really nice. But for this issue, for this episode, we picked Primal, Night of the Living Dead, and Seduth.
Yeah. Yep. And everything else belongs to a series somehow, or is related to a movie that we've talked about, or a Books of Blood, and we talked about all the Books of Blood stories that were adapted into comic books already. So all of the epic graphic novels and the Tapping the Veins stories, we've kind of gone through already. So our next one is Night of the Living Dead London. And this was done by Clive Barker and Steve Niles, and Castro was the artist. I can't remember what his first name is.
I can check that really quickly.
Yeah. So basically, the premise of this is that in 1968, which is the year of the movie Night of the Living Dead, a lady who had been bitten by a zombie gets on a plane to England. So it's kind of interesting if you follow Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead, Land of the Dead and Day of the Dead. In those movies, it wasn't exactly a disease. It was just one day everyone who dies gets back up again and they're zombies. But the premise of this is kind of more like a disease because it didn't happen in England until this one American lady came over on an airplane and infected the whole plane, and they landed and they all came spilling out and bit everybody, and then all of a sudden they had the 25-year war.
Yeah, and London looks like a wasteland.
Yeah, so now it's the present, which is 1993, and just about everyone's dead. I mean, there are little pockets here and there of people who are alive, but it follows mainly the royal family and the people who live there behind, in the palace. In
Buckingham Palace, yeah. The story is told from the perspective of the Archbishop of London, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny that, they when they're shooting at the zombies, they're calling them Catholics.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like you can tell that, for example, the Queen in that comic book is actually a depiction of Queen Elizabeth. Yeah. And is it Elizabeth II? I think so.
Yeah, and and there's a king too, and they call him King George, I think.
And there is someone who looks like Princess Diana too.
Yeah.
Although the guy who's married to her doesn't really look much like Prince Charles. So
no,
I don't know.
Yeah, and she flew over in a helicopter from let's see, her name was Princess Sarah Marie of Highgrove of Norway. So
because the Queen is trying to get her son married to someone of royal blood, because that's what royalty does. They get married to people of their own, kind.
Yeah.
And it's really difficult to find someone of royal blood because the world has been taken over by the zombies.
Yeah.
And it shows this, everybody's pretty much crazy in that, Buckingham Palace, surrounded by zombies. They even go out sometimes and just for the hell of it, they just go out and
they have a gunner mounted up on top of the car.
It's like a Rolls Royce or something. It's got a gunner on top, and they're just like blowing all the zombies away.
Yeah, just for no reason, just because this bishop wants to go out and drive around.
Yeah. And then one of the times that this bishop goes around shooting zombies, he tells the driver to stop the car because he finds a really lovely-looking boy. And, of course, this archbishop has his own, fetishes and, his own inclinations. And he actually takes that young man back to the palace. And this young man doesn't speak. Is just this really good-looking, handsome young man, but he doesn't really speak. And we have an idea.
He speaks in like one-word sentences.
Yeah, he's like yes, no, okay, and it's like the archbishop takes him to bed, and and we have this sense that something's not right with this guy.
Yeah.
And, and that's going to be confirmed on the second issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because spoilers, should we say spoilers?
I don't know.
All right, let's not say spoilers then. I don't know.
Yeah.
This is a rare comic. I don't know if people are still able to find it. I think they can still find it. I
highly recommend it. And you know what was... I think I've told this story before, but I brought one of these Night of the Living Dead issues with me to a book signing of Clive's in California. And the bookstore owner said, Steve Niles lives just right down the street. We can get him to come down here and sign this for you if you want. I'm like, oh my God, that's awesome. So they called him up and he came down and signed it. So I've got one of these issues is signed by Clive and the other is signed by Clive and Steve Niles.
Pretty sweet. Yeah. And the artwork in these comics is really nice. It's done by Carlos Castro.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunately it's in black and white, which I'm not sure if this was painted in black and white or if this was painted in... I can't believe this was done in color and then they just made it in black and white.
I think it was done in black and white as sort of a stylistic choice because it's Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah, and it gives it that, old horror feel.
Yeah, it kind of looks like inky paintings.
Yeah, I think this is probably done in black and white. And it looks really nice, the artwork. It reminds me of... I don't know. It reminds me of like Dan Brereton's art or something like that. It's this painted looking, watery looking art. Yeah. Really nice, really beautiful, and
I think it's kind of it's kind of topical in terms of like, how royalty looks down on the rest of the population and turns a blind eye to what's going on in the outside world because they're not really a part of it.
Yeah, it's like, well, the rest of the great unwashed masses are out there, and we're in here. We're the anointed by God.
Yeah. So, it's really interesting. It's like they act like, it's mostly the Queen is the worst one, but she acts like God chose them to survive, and all of those other people die, and so they have to continue their royal blood.
Yeah, the bloodline must continue. That's what the Queen says. The bloodline must continue, you idiot, when she's talking to her own son. Yeah. When he asks, why do I have to get married? Because the bloodline must continue, you idiot. Yeah. So that's all she cares about. That's all maintaining the bloodline. Yeah. Because I think she feels that, after the zombies are gone, that, there's still going to be royalty.
And it's just about a miracle that they find someone, for him. And she's beautiful and she can fly a helicopter. So she flies flies over from Norway and lands right into the palace. I mean, of course their plans don't go exactly the way they want.
Yeah, of course. On the second issue, all hell breaks loose. And, so... Staying away from spoilers, the wedding doesn't really happen the way we're thinking it's going to happen, and the zombies are going to, give them a hard time. Yeah.
Yeah, they it's one funny part is, just how disconnected they are, that they sent out all these carrier doves, right, with messages for invitations to the wedding. And then it's like they only got 2 back, and they were declines.
Yeah.
It's like,
well, I got the idea that the other ones got they got lost or eaten by the zombies or something. Yeah. And it's like, oh, sorry, I'm not going to be able to make it.
Yeah, we're kind of busy here with trying to stay alive.
Yeah, because they want to make a big wedding at St. Paul's Cathedral and all that stuff.
Yeah,
and they actually do.
Yeah, they have a procession right through the middle of town. These people are fighting off zombies. I think one of the poor gunner guys gets dragged off of the car and eaten. Yeah.
And meanwhile, the Rolls Royce is going down the street, speeding away, and the princess and the prince are in the car waving at the zombies, while the other guys are like gunning them down, opening up a pathway with like these bars and stuff that they put along the path to St. Paul's Cathedral. It's like, oh my God. Just ridiculous.
I think this would be a really cool kind of a side story for Night of the Living Dead to be made into a movie.
Yeah, this is all supposed to take place while, the movie is taking place. It's all supposed to be part of the same event going on around the world. I really like the beginning of it. When you see the woman in the plane and she starts she goes into the bathroom, she starts to puke blood, and she goes like, "Oh my God, something's really wrong with me," and then she dies inside the bathroom. And the hostess goes to open the door, and then there's the zombie in there, starts chewing on her, and it's like we've seen this before in several stories, like zombies, popping up inside airplanes. I mean, there's one of those things on Fringe. I think that's the first episode of Fringe. There's another one on a book that Guillermo del Toro wrote. I forgot the title. He wrote a book in 2009. I forgot the title. He wrote it with another guy.
Well,
and it also
airplanes are scary places because you're just stuck there in your seat for hours and there's nowhere to go.
Yeah, and you're inside a plane. If something goes wrong, the plane is going to go down. Everybody's going to die.
Yeah.
But, of course, they always find a way to get either the pilot is stuck in his cabin and he manages to land the plane, or there's some kind of automatic flight system that can remotely land the plane or something like that.
In this case, he shut the door and they're like, "Please help us. We're dying out here." He goes, "Shut up. Leave me alone. I can't help you."
Yeah, that's how the pilot handles it. And then, of course, they open up the plane and all these zombies come out.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you'd think that I don't know, you'd think that the pilot would have said, "Hey, there's some really bad stuff going on. Don't open the doors," or, only people with guns should open the doors. I don't know.
That it's just like something has to happen so the story can get started.
Yeah.
So they're just they see movement inside. Oh, someone's alive. Let's help them out. They open the door.
And
brain.
They eat all the paramedics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a really good one. I would recommend it because at least in here the story has a beginning and an ending.
Yeah, and this is not, it's not something that you would normally stumble onto. You have to really, really be searching for Clive Barker stuff to find out about this. Because it's not like you wouldn't think, oh yeah, Clive Barker co-wrote, Night of the Living Dead comic book in black and white in the 90s.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really good.
I like the artwork. I think the story is really good, and I would recommend it.
Yeah.
If you can find it, it's 2 issues.
Yeah.
And there's a trade paperback if you can find it.
Oh, is there really?
Somehow.
To get both?
Yeah. There's a trade paperback. If you go on Revelations, you'll see the covers of the individual issues, and then a cover for the trade paperback, which has the Union Jack.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so our next one is Seduth, and this is not old from the early 90s, from that heyday of comic books. This is actually only just a couple of years ago, written in 2009. So Seduth is a 3D comic. You have to wear the old-timey kind of red and green. Is it red and green or red and blue? Red and blue, I think.
It's cyan and red glasses.
Yeah. And but the way that the 3D works in that comic is incredible. I mean, it looks really, really good.
It does. I had a great time reading it. My only complaint is that you read through it really, really quickly.
Yeah.
I still don't. I can't really put in one single phrase what the comic book is about.
No, it's really, really hard to figure. It starts out, fairly easy to follow. There's this diamond that was found on an expedition, or when they were trying to build a building in Africa, and this huge diamond, and this one guy can see a darkness inside of the diamond. And so there's an auction for the diamond, and the man who wins it, he finds him and kills him. And takes it, and then everyone around him he starts killing, and this darkness, eventually the diamond sort of explodes, and the darkness comes out and takes over the world.
Yeah, it's like a sickness that kills most of the people in the world, right?
And he becomes a carrier for the disease, so he isn't actually afflicted, he doesn't die.
Yeah,
and it's a disease. He's got they could say he's got diamond blood, and it's like shards will come out of him, and it's really it gets kind of hard to follow after that.
It's very dreamlike.
Yeah,
it's a very dreamlike story, and there's all these big splashes and big double page spreads that really take advantage of the 3D.
Yeah.
I mean, when the diamond explodes, you could actually see all the little shards floating in the 3D.
Yeah. And I spent a lot of time just this last time as I reread it. I spent a lot of my time kind of moving the page back and forth a little bit to try to see how the different layers were overlapping each other, and how does this even make sense? How can this possibly happen? It's just really, it's like magic.
Yeah. Yeah, I love 3D stuff. I actually have a pair of 3D glasses, but the actual glasses with 3D lenses. I actually bought those once to watch 3D movies because I love 3D movies. One of the first 3D, I'm just going a little off topic here, but one of the first 3D movies that I saw was the monster from the Black Lagoon, the creature from the Black Lagoon. Right. So that was the first 3D movie I've ever seen, and that was actually on the TV. There was a big, preparation. Like a week before the movie, they would sell all the glasses, and they would tell us how to tune the TV so we could see the 3D movie. Wow. And then I saw the movie, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. It was the first time I ever saw a 3D movie. Yeah. And we're talking maybe, I don't know, let me think, maybe 89 or something. Yeah. I don't know.
I remember seeing Freddy's Dead in the theater.
Oh, yeah.
With the 3D
I have the DVD, but it's not on 3D, the ending, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, and it's like this Seduth, you can get it in a graphic novel with some other stuff, but why would you do that without the 3D glasses? It doesn't make any sense. If you're going to buy this, you should buy the individual issue. It's not that old. It shouldn't be that hard to track down.
So it's been reprinted without being on 3D?
I think it's isn't it in the one that that IDW that has The Great and Secret Show and Thief of Always, and I think it has Seduth at the end.
I don't really buy the trades. I just buy the individual issues. So.
Well, I can kind of see why you would do that now. I bought Hellraiser Master. We talked a little bit about this earlier, but I bought Hellraiser Masterpieces. And reading them, I got kind of annoyed, wondering, instead of enjoying the stories that were in there, I just kept thinking about which ones I was missing, and why are they deciding which ones I should read and which ones I shouldn't, and now I just want to go back and buy those 20 issues instead of having to deal with, this is the best of Hellraiser.
Yeah, and not just that, but I've noticed this, and I think I mentioned this before a couple of times, that the eventual reprints from, for example, the epic Hellraiser stories, they're not as crisp and clear as the actual issues from the 90s.
Yeah,
so sometimes you're looking at it and you're like, it looks like someone took a Xerox color copy of the actual issues and they reprinted it. It's like, it's not, the scans seem to be, it's a second generation thing. Yeah. So you can tell if you get a Marvel one of those Hellraiser masterpieces, and you have the actual 92 or 91 comic book, you will see a big difference in the quality of the image. Yeah. So that's one of the things I would advise people to buy. Yeah. Look for it on eBay or something. Just get the actual, epic Marvel Hellraiser issues.
Well, and like that Great and Secret Show, Thief of Always and Seduth trade paperback is smaller than a normal comic book, and you need a magnifying glass to read the text.
Right.
And that, I didn't like that. I mean, I like having them all there in one small thing that takes up less space on my shelf, but I don't know.
Sure. Well, for comic books that are like recent, from like 2009, 2010, 2011. You can actually get I'm sure that there are e-versions that you can get. I don't know if there are e-versions of the Boom comics, but it would be nice if there were. I mean, you could actually buy them on iBooks or something like that. Are they available there or not?
There was something that I can't remember.
Because I remember seeing samples from some of the Hellraiser comics that they would sometimes put out on the internet.
But they're always trade paperbacks, and since those aren't, I mean, I don't know, those they mix the stories all up, and it's not, it's like it'd be nice to just have the issues, instead of the stories compiled in different ways.
I got the Seduth comic book thanks to our friend Maureen.
Oh, yeah.
She actually went to the to the event where Clive was signing them. There was the well, I wouldn't say premiere. It was like the release of the comic books, and it was some kind of event that happened in Los Angeles. And Maureen, she got me the 2 covers of Seduth, signed by Clive Barker, which was wonderful of her.
That's awesome.
Thank you, Maureen. Yeah.
I have the one with the diamond on the front, but not the one with the Clive Barker drawing.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, when the postman was putting it in my mailbox, he actually was he folded them in half and stuck it in my mailbox. So that was,
what a jerk.
Yeah, I complained on the post office. I actually filed a complaint, and but in the end, it didn't really damage them that much, and I put them between 2 heavy books, and the creases kind of came off a little bit. So
that's good.
They're signed by Clive Barker. They look nice.
Yeah.
They have a few creases on the backbone of the comic, but it's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really hated that male person. I was like, oh my god! If I could have put my hands on them, I would have said, this actually says like printed matter, fragile. Why would you fold it in half and stick it in my mailbox?
Yeah.
But whatever.
Yeah. Well, and getting back to Seduth, I recommend it a lot. I mean, I think the biggest issue is you put on those 3D glasses. I mean, for me, I had to put them over the top of my glasses. And then I was straining to read the text, and then the glasses would fall off, and so I fought a little bit with that. But but the 3D is so amazing, and the story is good, but then it gets a little bit incomprehensible, but it's still really cool.
Oh yeah, this was written by Clive Barker and edited by Chris Monfett, and the artwork is from Gabriel Rodriguez, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
and
from 20.
Isn't he some kind of a genius with 3D? I think I read something about that. He's taken the old time 50s 3D and just really run with it and done things that no one else could do.
There's some things for example, words from Chris Monfett about Seduth. It says here, Seduth is a single-issue comic, a one-shot, neither of which are terms which seem to sufficiently describe what it is we've done. It isn't the beginning of some sprawling mythology, though certainly what happens there is part of one, nor is it some simple, terrifying tale awash with blood, though it certainly terrifies and certainly it bleeds.
Yeah.
If a comic book can be in some sense a poem, if, as Clive first pitched it to me, we can capture the spirit of Dali or Buñuel in 24 pages of artful madness, then perhaps let's call it that. So that's what he says about Seduth. And another thing he says is, it occurred to me there in that room that if one was to address the concept of nihilism, one must first address the very nature of form, both physical and metaphysical. Mm-hmm. Consequently, there are 2 architects in Seduth, one human, the other decidedly not. I'm guessing he's talking about the crystal. Yeah. And a 3rd character, the title character, who could be best described as the anti-architect. So there is a madman and a plague. There are murders and a birth. And there is, of course, the diamond. So it's supposed to be like this, like you said, like kind of a poem, philosophy thing.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed it. I only thought it was really, really short, and I wish it was longer.
Yeah.
Or that it would go on to another kind of ongoing series, see what would happen. But, sometimes it's best if we just have like a one-shot that's really, offbeat and surprising, then fall into a ongoing series that will just become bland and boring and predictable.
Or that loses its funding before they get a chance to end the story. I mean, like if you look at Nightbreed or Primal.
Or Primal.
Yeah.
It's a perfect example right there.
Yeah, I mean, geez, Primal, they knew when they printed issue 1 and 2 that they were never going to do 3 and 4 because it says 1 of 2 and 2 of 2 right on them.
Right, and obviously number 2 is not a conclusion to anything.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, and then Nick Vince, as he was writing the Nightbreed series, somebody told him he had all these stories planned out, and somebody told him, "You better wrap it all up because this series is coming to an end." And so he tried to kind of cram all of his stories into one final episode by putting newspaper headlines in there, which is a cool idea. It was a really smart way to try to deal with this problem that they gave him.
Yeah, and, I mean, at least now that Nicholas Vince has gone back to writing books after a long hiatus in his writing career, at least now he has all the space that he wants to develop his stories. Mm-hmm. And there's actually a good surprise coming up for a next episode, right, Ryan?
Yep. We're if all goes well, we'll be interviewing Nicholas Vince next time.
Yeah.
To talk about his new book, What Monsters Do.
Yeah, we promised we wouldn't have him back on the show. So, now that the book has been out for a while and we both bought it and read it so far, so we are now in a position that we can ask him some questions about the stories.
Yeah.
So looking forward to that.
Yeah. So, feedback. We've got some feedback from the website. John Chatham said, "Hi, guys. Another great podcast. This was about our episode about nothing. Don't know if it's been covered, but in a recent interview on Kevin Smith's Smodcast, filmmaker Vincent Pereira discusses his aborted attempts at adapting Pig Blood Blues. You can find it here," and he gave the link. So I started to listen to that podcast after I read this, but I haven't made it to that part of it yet. It's about an hour and a half long podcast, and I am going to be listening to that. So is this talking about the Seraphim version or some earlier one?
I don't know. I haven't really heard about this podcast until right now. Actually, I'm sorry, John. I didn't see your comments. I'm going to listen to that podcast too. Maybe we can pick this up on the next episode.
And it was, and he did post this like a few weeks back, but I only just saw this comment. I only just saw this comment 2 days ago, and so I tried like crazy to find the time to listen to the rest of that, but I didn't make it. But I'm going to. I have that's the one I'm in the middle of right now on my iPhone.
Right. I'm going to listen to it too, and then maybe we can answer his question next episode.
Yeah. So another comment we got on the web, Corey Norman said, "Hey guys, I wanted to thank you for plugging our upcoming film, The Hanover House. We really appreciate the support. I love the podcast, and I'm going to start sharing this with everyone I know." So thank you, Corey. That was awesome. I'm looking forward to seeing this new movie, The Hanover House, with Ann Bobby. Of course, Clive Barker fans know that Ann Bobby was Laurie in Nightbreed.
Yeah, and she's actually been doing some video. I don't know what to call it. Maybe like video journals from her experience doing the movie, and she just posted some videos about talking about the movie, talking about the supposed haunted house that she's doing the movie in, and she's been posting some pictures on Facebook of the house, and there's like a creepy vibe about that house, and so I hope that the movie is very successful.
Yeah, looking forward to it. In an email, we got an email from Matteo Carnio. He said, "Thank you for this. I loved the novel talking about the Damnation game. So good and visceral." I agree with that.
I agree, especially the visceral part. When you go to the last chapters,
It's not a dreamy novel like so many others of Clive's.
Sweet World.
Yeah, it's so much more grounded and gritty, and
it's still coming off the vibe of the Books of Blood.
Yeah.
So it's still got that whole, punch to the gut thing. Yeah. And, Clive is still in his, full form on his old horror thing. So he's hitting you in the gut when you least expect it. It's like wondrous visions of, supernatural events, but then all of a sudden it gets really ugly and it gets on your face, and there's blood and guts, and there's like, zombies and big empty, darkness that swallows you whole, and it's trying to Mamulian is trying to get Whitehead to join him there. So that was a really fun book to read. I read it twice, and it was a good episode.
Yeah, that was fun. Facebook, we have Nicholas Vince actually wrote to us. He said, "Not a question, but thought you'd like to know the artist on Night of the Living Dead, London, is the same Carlos." So this Carlos Castro, who designed the front cover of What Monsters Do. So
awesome.
If you look at the cover of that book, it's got a, and we'll be talking about this more in our next episode, but it's got someone is reading a book, and the book kind of has eyes and a face on it. So like the book is a monster.
And teeth. So it's a Libri Dentata.
Like the Necronomicon Ex Mortis in the Evil Dead movies.
I love that cover. It looks really, really nice.
Yeah.
The whole book with a face and teeth, it's like the person's holding the book over their own face, and the book is a monster face. So it's like really nice. Yeah. So, looking forward to that episode.
Yeah. Another one from Chris Jones. He said, "I don't know if you mentioned it or not, but Clive Barker was the cover artist for Deep Dark Fantasies #1. Yes. And I have that, and I started to read a little bit of it, but those stories really are not related to Clive Barker at all. The only thing about it is the cover. Seems all right, And that cover is not, isn't really a painting that he made specifically for that comic. It's a painting that existed before then.
Okay, so Deep Dark Fantasies #1.
Yeah.
I was just trying to find that book because I never heard of it.
Oh yeah, I saw it on eBay one time and I bought it, just to see what it was, and it's like, oh, he only did the cover, so I hadn't gotten around to reading it. And I tried to read it before this episode, but like that podcast, I just haven't had the time.
Oh, I see it. It's like this woman figure sitting on top of a crouching male figure.
Yeah. Yeah, and he went on to say that he thought that female figure looked like a female version of Peliquin. And I can see that.
Yeah, it actually does, yeah.
But I think that I've seen that painting before, and it wasn't, on this cover. I think that painting just exists. It's just one of his works that's got used for this.
Okay, I'm looking at it. Deep Dark Fantasies, and it's got a really nice looking cover.
Yeah.
All right, so I just found it on eBay, for $5.
Yeah, it's pretty cheap.
It's from 1995. It was published by Dark Fantasies Comics, and it features artists Chan Man Loon, Ben Fogletto, and more. Writers Darnay, M. Russo, H. Spear, and more. Front cover, Clive Barker. So there you go. The stories are The Time Dissolvers and When the Grave Gives Up, and An Act of Preservation, and another story called Nadas.
And I read about one page of The Time Dissolvers. That's as far as I got.
Okay. All right. Looks nice. I like the cover. I wouldn't mind having it as a poster.
Yeah.
It does look like a female version of Peliquin.
Yeah.
She's got the whole, I don't know how to call it, but the whole snaky looking dreadlocks thing going on. All right.
Yeah. So, thinking about Peliquin, I kind of wonder what, in the world that we are in today with, movie effects, what Peliquin would be like. Or were those things meant to kind of move around on their own?
Yeah, I'm sure they were. I mean, have you ever, if you've seen, Hellboy 2, well, actually 1, Hellboy 1.
Yeah.
There's that creature that Hellboy fights in the museum that's supposed to have, every time you kill it, 2 more take its place.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean. They're kind of they crawl on all fours, and they're big, long, green creatures, and they have those kind of tentacly things on their heads.
Actually, those tentacle things are not CGI, apart from the rest of the monster.
Oh,
they were actually, practical effects. They were, they had some servos in there, and they would just lift some tentacles and drop them down again, and the tentacles themselves would actually give the effect of snaking around, and it looked really nice. So it could be done with practical effects.
Yeah.
I know that in the movie we just see Oliver Parker shake his head around, which kind of reminds me of Bela Lugosi rolling around with the octopus mannequin in the dirt.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah,
but it works.
We could give some quick mentions of other things that Clive Barker's done. There's a Neil Gaiman book called Now We Are Sick that's all like sick poetry, and Clive Barker did the cover for that. I have an issue that's signed by everyone, and I have a copy of that's signed by everyone.
Cool. Does it have any artwork in there, or is it just written stuff?
No, I mean just the front cover is by Clive, and then it's all just poems inside.
There's also another thing that was done by Voltaire. It was from a comic book called Deddy.
Yeah.
The Malevolent
you were
Teddy.
mentioning that earlier. Yeah, and go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it was Deddy the Malevolent Teddy, and I think that the comic book is called. I'm trying to find it. Here it is. The Waiting Room. There's a story called The Waiting Room where Deddy finds the Stenobites. The Stenobites are actually Cenobites from the. I'm trying to recollect here. From this seventh circle of middle management hell, and I'm sorry. They are the Stenobites, demons from the seventh circle of middle management hell. And you had like paperclip head, keyboard mouth, post-it face. I remember, I never really read the comic, but I remember when the comic came out and Voltaire posted a few pictures, like a few pages of the comic book, especially the ones that involve the Stenobites.
That's how I first heard about that too. I don't own that comic either. I might buy that now. Now we're talking about it.
Daddy goes to sleep in the comic book, and then he experiences a nightmare that he meets the Stenobites. So that was like in 2006. No, wait, 2004 maybe.
Yeah.
2004. Yes, 2004. So it was Deddy, the Malevolent Teddy by Voltaire. Voltaire is this performer who also did music and stuff. I mean, you met him, right?
Yeah, I saw him at Texas Frightmare Weekend in 2010, I think, or 2009, and he that was pretty cool. He did a kind of a workshop on stop motion animation, and how he got started in that, and he did a lot of like bumpers for Halloween shows on MTV and stuff like that. Oh, Neil Gaiman had a book of a comic that was just full of portraits of death. And, and Clive Barker did one portrait of death for that.
Wow, do you know the title of that?
I owned it, but I may not own it anymore. I have to.
Yeah, that's one of the things that happens to
Death Gallery, I think it was called, or something like that.
Okay, that's one of the things that happens with collectors. After a while, we're not really sure what we have anymore.
Yeah, and that was.
Do I have that?
Yeah, and I've got boxes of comics, and I thought I'd sorted out all the Clive Barker related stuff and separated it out and put it with my Clive Barker collection, but it might still be in those boxes, or it's possible I sort of binge and purge, and it's possible that I might have, felt guilty about how much crap that I own and sold it.
Oh boy,
yeah. I do that often.
Right, here's the $1 million question. Are you going to participate in Odyssey 2?
I think I would like to.
Yeah.
But
I was thinking about it too. I was thinking, can I write something? And maybe I would let the prologue thing move past and see what direction people are going, and then maybe for chapter 1 I might just try to send an entry.
Yeah, it feels like an awful lot of pressure to do that very first one, because then you're pretty much deciding how the whole rest of the story is going to go. I kind of want someone else to do that.
Yeah. Clive didn't really give us much to go on the first on the prologue.
Yeah, right. But, and there were little hints like, oh, maybe the vomit is something alive, or maybe, and there were like little things like, you could take this story anywhere.
Well, yeah. In the first collaborative project that he did for Kaleidospace in '95, he actually gave a much more detailed, a much more rich entry. Yeah. I mean, there's this guy, he's got a knife. There's mention of this great treatise that was stolen by a demon. He's barefoot. He's been warned by a fortune teller to be careful of walking in a street with no name, and he just walks into a street that has no name. And it's like, well, should he go forward or not? Decisions.
Oh,
and it's like,
cool.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. I think I wrote something about he would walk into the street, listen to some kind of noise, and listen to a closing door. He would rush to that door, walk in there, he'd find a demon or something. And I don't remember. This was like written almost 20 years ago, 15 years ago.
Did your submission make it into the thing?
No, I never really made it into it. I don't know. There was only like 5 or 6 people, I think, that actually wrote entries for that, and it made it to like 3 or 4 levels, and then it just tapered off.
So it wasn't super well organized, it sounds like.
No, well, in '95, I guess there were still few people that had access to the internet, so
they're all university people.
Yeah, probably just people at universities, I guess, and people at home with like, I don't know, like those telephone line modems, 128, kbs a second or so, a minute or something.
If you're lucky, I had a 1200 baud modem.
Oh wow!
And on my Amiga 500.
Jesus. Does it still work? I mean, could you still connect that to your phone line? And
yeah. Well, I think I replaced it with it was 2400 baud, which was twice as fast. And then I would only be able to, when I was in the university, because my computer was getting a little old. It was from 1987. So I could only go on the web, on the text version of the web.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, I remember those times. I used to access the intranet on my university on a computer that was like a telnet connection. I would have to...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I did that, too.
And there were terminals in my university that still had the Hercules screen display that was all green and black. And we're talking about 94, and I was like, wow, this is really old, even for 94.
Remember Matt that was on our art episode? So one time he had his computer, and he was going through settings in the BIOS, and he said, Hercules, that sounds awesome. I wonder what that does. And he went and selected it. And then, his screen went blank, and it took hours for another friend of mine, to go through it and fix it.
Yeah. But, those days, I mean, I would look for Clive Barker all the time on Alta Vista, and I would find I found an interview on Clive Barker, or someone had made a page on Angel Fire or GeoCities, and it would have like a picture of Clive Barker and some animated GIFs and some article that they had copied onto that page, and it would be like talking about making Hellraiser 3, and it's like, hey, what's going to happen with Hellraiser 3? It's going to be like this guy, Hell on Earth, Pinhead is going to come to Earth, and I was like, yes, this is going to be awesome.
Yeah.
And I remember those simpler days when I would listen. I would just hear about the movies just a few months before they would come out.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't even know anything. I mean, you wouldn't even know who was going to act in there or who was going to direct it.
No, I kind of like that. I missed that.
Yeah, nowadays it's like every little false start that happens, you know about it almost instantly. It's like,
and whatever you want to buy, you're just limited by how much money you have. You're not spending your whole life searching for things in bookstores and hoping that you run into them.
Yeah, and these comic books are also, especially the ones from the 90s, are something that also very few people got to know about them because, for one, they were published in the United States, and a lot of these didn't really make it out of the United States.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I think that maybe Night of the Living Dead London was published in England. But I don't know if Primal ever got published in England, for example. So I don't know if it was just like a U.S. thing. And
yeah, good question.
So they were really rare. They were done in 91, 92.
Yeah.
And Jesus, in those days, these things would only come out in magazines or something. I mean, if they ever came out in magazines like Wizard or Hero, there was really no internet to tell you that, hey, there's a comic book coming out by Clive Barker.
Yeah.
You might want to pre-order it. It's like, what's a pre-order?
I remember seeing that Tapping the Vein, for the first time in the early 90s. Was that like 91 that those came out? And saying, oh, this is something new by Clive Barker. And then I open it up, and it's like, oh, it's just an adaptation of, Books of Blood story that I already have. And so it's not until recently I started actually collecting those and appreciating them. But back then, I was always looking for something new that I'd never read before.
Oh, yeah, but it was still awesome to see, like, comic book adaptations of the Books of Blood. I mean...
Yeah, well, for me, I was trying to, build up my collection, and I would go to a bookstore and say, give me a dot matrix print out of everything. I didn't say give me a dot matrix print out, but that's what they did. Give me a print out of everything that you have that's Clive Barker and, in your warehouse or whatever. So I'd get a print out, and I saw, like, The Hellbound Heart for $17. And I was like, oh, $17? That's a hardcover price, not a, And I bought it, and it turned out to be the audio tapes, the audio book.
Oh, yeah.
Because there was no hardcover.
That's got to be disappointing a bit. Was it at least the tapes read by Clive Barker himself?
Yeah. So that was kind of an accidental find, but it was cool.
Yeah, I like that.
The book is abridged.
Is it abridged?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I followed along one time just to see all the parts that were cut out. It's not huge amounts, but enough.
All right, because I have that in like 3 CDs.
I put it onto iTunes. I read a tutorial online about how to convert an MP3 into an audiobook, to go into your audiobook section on iTunes.
Yeah. Okay, well that's pretty cool. I mean, I used to get stuff imported from Portugal to Portugal. There was a British bookstore in a neighbor city. And the things would be really, really expensive. I mean, just for an idea how much I paid for some things. One time I bought that book, Gary Hoppenstand. Clive Barker's Books of Blood and Other Stories, that whole analysis, psychological and philosophical analysis of the Books of Blood by Gary.
That thing's been expensive since the start because it's published like a textbook.
Yeah, and it cost me, imported from England, it cost me almost 70-something euros.
Yeah.
Which is probably like $80. And I was like, oh, man. Well, but I was pining for that book for years, and finally I was the only one who actually had any interest in buying that book.
Yeah.
Because that book would be on the shelf forever, for years, and I would be, every time I walk into the store, I would see the book on the shelf, and I would be like, I want that book.
But
and of course nowadays
expensive.
I go on
And
of course nowadays I go on eBay and I find the book there for like $15, $20 and I'm like,
really?
oh Jesus.
Oh, I want to get it. I've been meaning to buy that. And then
you can find it.
What's that other one that was written by a woman and I can't think of what it's called? It was Clive Barker, Mythmaker for the Millennium. That's what it was called.
Oh, by Suzanne Barbieri.
Yes.
It was the first book ever published by the British Fantasy Association. I have a copy of that. It's not really very interesting. It's kind of smallish. It's a small book. It's got a lot of drawings in there, but they're not by Clive Barker. Yeah. And it just gives like a short one-page description of some of Clive Barker's books that were released at the time, and they have some little quotes from Clive Barker and some analysis. But you know, it's an interesting one. But I think much more interesting than that is the biography by Douglas C. Winter.
Yeah, I have all those. I just don't have those two textbooky ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, there's another really rare comic book that I've been trying to find for years, and I just want to drop this one here at the end of the episode. If someone knows anything about the manga adaptation of Hellraiser, I would really love to know, because all I have is a scan of one page of the comic book where there's like a Kirsty character confronting a Frank-like character. Of course, they're made in the style of manga. And it came out on something called like something Bear. I don't know. It looks like it came out in one of those big volumes of manga that would have several stories.
So it's probably only in Japan.
Yeah, if anybody has any clue about the manga adaptation of Hellraiser, which was done back in the late 80s, I would really love to know.
Oh, man. Good luck finding that. Holy cow.
Yeah. I have a page. I have one scanned page that I took out of Shadows in Eden.
Yeah.
And there is no reference in the bottom of the book, at the end of the book, about where it's from.
Yeah.
There is no caption on the picture. And it's just there. It's just like a manga page of a Christie-like character holding a lament configuration and confronting a Frank-like character.
Oh, up in the attic?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, I would love to know if there is more of that. You know, I mean, I'd really love to know.
That's cool. Yeah. So that's that would be definitely super rare.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we're kind of at the end.
Seduth, I would recommend it very, very strongly.
Yeah.
Night of the Living Dead London. It's also a pretty entertaining two-parter.
Yeah, and it's complete.
Yeah, it's good. And Primal, it's just for the completist out there who really wants to get that. Maybe you're better off getting Cradle to the Grave, Primal. Maybe that's... Is that more like a one-shot thing?
It is, yeah. I mean, but you only get to actually see the creature at the very last couple of pages.
Right. So
it's more of like a lead-in to what was supposed to be that 4-part story. Well, you can find us on the web at www.clivebarkercast.com. Leave a review on iTunes, on Facebook. We have a like page on Facebook, or join the Occupy Midian group. On Twitter, we're at BarkerCast or at Occupy Midian. And the forum is www.timewinds.com/Clive. And the official website for Occupy Midian is www.occupymidian.com.
And I would like to wish Russell Charrington a happy birthday.
Yes, happy birthday, Russell Charrington.
Your work inspires us all.
Hello, this is Ryan again. In the original airing of this episode, we had the song Look at You Over There Ripping the Sawdust from My Teddy Bear by Alice Cooper right here. In order to respect the rights holders, we've removed it from the episode, and I recommend you find Look at You Over There Ripping the Sawdust from My Teddy Bear by Alice Cooper and give it a listen. It is on the Alice Cooper box set, The Life and Crimes of Alice Cooper. And that song was a demo, so it's not on any regular albums. So anyway, thank you for understanding, and this podcast, having no beginning, will have no end.